Tonight on Enough Said with KFAN Radio's Dan Barreiro.
Maybe this is a sign that the dark cloud that whatever can go wrong will go wrong is over for this team.
Attorney and HoldingCourtPodcast.com's Ron Rosenbaum.
I'm from St. Paul.
Here we go.
I don't know anybody who lives in Minneapolis.
Speaking
Honestly,
of
St. Paul is
insecurity,
10,000 better, much better.
And executive producer Lori Fisher, who is keeping these guys on track and deciding when enough said.
I realize that they hate the public school.
And frankly, the rhetoric of saying that Republicans don't like public school, my guess is if you ask the governor now, he would probably retract that statement and apologize for it.
Well, if they want to prove me wrong, they should vote for universal pre-K. Then I'll apologize.
Our governor not backing down. We begin tonight with the budget battle at the state capitol. Governor Dayton, as promised, vetoing the education bill because it did not have extra money in it for universal preschool. Now there has to be a special session, and soon. Emotions running high on this one, guys.
Well, Dowd said if the governor had to do it all over again, he wouldn't say that. Well, the governor did have a chance to do it all over again.
And what did he
said
double down?
Exactly the same thing. I have mixed feelings about this.
That's rare for you. Usually there's no middle ground.
This is one of these things where this is what leads to the partisanship. I don't know why he's not mad at the Democrats. They didn't vote for it either, but the Republicans are a bunch of haters. That's most ridiculous rhetoric. On the other hand, for years I've advocated, I love politicians who say what they really mean. He's not playing to the crowd. This is not a popular thing. The one thing about Dayton, unhinged, he'll say anything.
Yeah,
I kind of like that, even if I disagree.
Well, it's a form of leadership. I get your point on that. I'm not always going to play it like, well, I'll get this piece and you'll get that piece. He thinks, or if he's trying to say this piece is really important to me, I'm going to go to war over it. But you've hit on the key thing. People who basically he had in positions of authority on early learning in his administration.
They went the other way.
They're against this.
I know.
They're against the universal aspect.
So why does he pick only Republicans?
Because it's easy and because that's the sad place we're in where I love kids and you hate kids, and I'm leaving out what school people say, administrators say, well, we're already stretched thin. We don't have enough teachers to do this.
They're not even prepared for this,
They're
are
not,
they?
They don't even think it's properly funded, and that's why I think Dayton is making a terrible calculation. If he thinks going on in the state, I'm going to isolate the bad guys and I'm going to be the good guy, I think he is completely lost the high ground on this.
But he doesn't look like he's ready to compromise, Dan.
He
when you call these people haters, there's really not a lot of places you can go to compromise.
He's delusional.
I wanted to show you guys a couple tweets because we tweeted this out asking, do you blame the governor or do you blame the legislature for the impasse? David Haney says, Dayton all the way, government subsidized daycare is not what we need. Legislative gave too much as it is. And J.C. Werner saying, I blame the voters for voting these people into office.
Well, I mean, how can you not blame Dayton? Bach and Dowd reached an agreement. They take it to the governor. It had a big increase for education. But on the other hand, there is a part of me that loves a politician that says, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm crazy as a loon. I'll say what I believe.
This is Minnesota, though. We're supposed to be more civilized. But I agree with you on style. I don't mind this style. And a lot of people, I think, in this state, oh, my God, this isn't what we're about.
Well, that's Minnesota.
But he's losing it on the substance of the case where who controls the Senate?
Okay, and enough said on that one. Let's move on to something fun. The Timberwolves getting something or doing something that hasn't been seen in 25 years as long as they've been around. They won the #1 draft pick for the NBA draft next month. Ping pong's going their way. Shouldn't we all be happy now about this?
Well, I'll say this. We should be happy for two reasons. One, maybe this is a sign that the dark cloud that whatever can go wrong will go wrong is over for this team. Maybe they actually can't. They've gotten 2 breaks in a row. They got Wiggins. And now they have, well, they'll probably pick the wrong guy, but we'll get to that in a minute. The other reason I love it is I'm hoping it'll shut up conspiracy theorists like you. I'm thinking you're one of them.
Me?
Who assumes that it's all been rigged, it's all against us, and that's why we never get the #1 pick. Now we get the #1 pick, and what's the answer from the conspiracy theorists? Well, you know what they're going to say. Well, they had to do this to throw us off. I'm so sick of hearing about these folks who they don't give you evidence of a conspiracy. They just say, we'll prove there's not a conspiracy.
Well, all right. That's absurd. I got my own problems, but I'm not a conspiracy guy. But once LA got the number 2, everything that I thought was going to happen is going to happen. Where do you think Okafor or Towns would prefer? I think we'd rather go to Minnesota and freeze our behinds off
there's no
in
doubt.
this small little town. So all of a sudden now we're going to have our own problem with our little chip on the shoulder. Neither of these guys are going to, they're not going to want to come here.
Sit out.
They're going to do everything they can to not come here, and it's going to be, they don't like us. They really don't like us. So even when we win,
Yeah, here's the
we
graphic
lose.
of the top 3. Us, and then you said the Lakers, and then Philly. Top 3. There you go.
Yeah. Well, again, I think the conspiracy theorists assumed the Lakers would get number 1, and they did not.
But they did get number 2 in a year where you can make the argument,
moved
Dan,
up a few
that
spots,
there's
that's fine.
2 guys that will both
Yes.
change teams,
That's
right?
fine. But, you know, and people always say, well, why don't they actually show the whole lottery on TV if it's not fixed? Are you aware that we landed on the moon? And do you remember that it was televised?
Are you sure?
There you go. How many people say, well, I don't care it was televised. That could
Well,
have
I
been a
was home
studio.
with a tinfoil hat. I know. There are people, this is what we talked about a couple weeks ago,
It's the same
that don't
issue.
believe anything the government says. I don't believe it's fixed, although I do think the year that Patrick Ewing went to New York,
There might have been
I
some,
do think it was fixed.
some that they call dry ice might have made it a little bit colder. But the televising thing, we don't believe anything. It wouldn't matter if they televised it. The idiots,
Why
the
don't they
loons
televise
would still
it?
say
Why don't they
it's all fixed
See, you're
by the
so
NBA.
naive. You believe everything.
I don't
you're
believe
told.
everything, but I don't believe
You seem
what
to
these
believe a
nuts
lot.
believe.
Do you guys want to hear from Flip what he had to say about all
I guess,
this?
if we have to.
Okay, let's take a listen.
As I told our guys, we have to rely on our ability to select the right players, have the right character, and have the competitiveness, and it will fit in with our players. And like I said, over there, I said we've got a lot of ways that we can go. So this gives us great flexibility.
It's really controversial.
They tanked
Well, we
for
got to
Towns.
make the best pick, and we got to do what we got to do, and we got to do what we got to. I mean, that's why I don't really, nothing against Flip. I like Mark Dayton because he'll say anything and he doesn't care.
Well, what
this
did you want him
is
to
a
say?
non-statement.
What was he going to say?
I don't know, but that was nothing.
He's going to, I mean, they successfully tanked, is what they
Well,
did.
you're really
That's what he
close
needed.
with Flip.
That's what he
So
needed
he'll
to say.
defend him no matter what he
Well,
says.
That has nothing to do with that. I don't know what you want him to say. They do have good options now. They at least
Who
have
would you
a
pick?
chance. I would pick Towns, but I think they're going to pick Okafor.
I would pick Okafor, but he doesn't want to play here.
But I'd take either one of
He's
them.
already said he doesn't want to play here.
They're
He wants
not
to go
gonna,
to L.A.
They're not going to flunk
Can
the
you
physical.
blame him?
No, but one of them will come. They have no choice. They may leave as soon as they can, but that's another story.
Well, they don't have a choice. You're right about that. They're not.
Welcome back to Enough Said. Let's talk about ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos. It came out that he didn't disclose donating thousands of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. If you remember, he worked for President Bill Clinton. Republicans now questioning if he can be unbiased during the election season. ABC standing by him. Stephanopoulos saying it was an honest mistake. Are you guys surprised or shocked by all of this?
I'm not surprised or shocked by any of it, and I don't think Ron, just Republicans should be bothered by this. Although, as we said, every story we have, it becomes partisan. It's my guy does it, it's okay. Your guy does it, it's the end of the world. I think this is actually worse than some of the allegations against Brian Williams inventing war stories, because this goes to be directly related to he's interviewing a guy who is writing about the Clinton Foundation.
And he's giving
pounding
behind
him.
his back to the Clinton
Well,
Foundation.
he's pounding away at him and with some good questions and some fair questions, and he's leaving out a rather important component and pretending there's no honest mistake about this. None whatsoever. This is to me worse, and there's another part of me that says, why should we be surprised almost from the beginning?
Well,
you hand this job to such a to a guy who was obviously tight with Clinton.
Well,
what do you expect?
You hit it right on the nose. This guy's not a journalist. He was a communications
And a good one.
director in 1992
Right.
for Bill Clinton's campaign. What that means is his job is to sell Bill Clinton. Do you think he wasn't a Democrat? So ABC hires him, originally as an analyst, and somehow he morphs
Rolls
into
over.
being a journalist. He's not a journalist. He never was a journalist. I think, and I totally agree with you, the Brian Williams thing was stupid. It hurt his credibility.
It definitely undermined
it. Had nothing to do with partisanship. But how can you have the face of a news organization be a behind the scenes, if not in front of the scenes, partisan? I don't know how they hired him in the first place. He's not a journalist.
And how does he? How do you not realize the obvious conflict in this particular case? In sports, there's coaches from teams end up being analysts all the time. And I think people accept it, A, because it's sports, B, because, well, if he's biased, it might be for one team. In politics, there are only two real teams.
Well,
so if you're going to be built in, connected to one of the two teams, I'm always, no matter how hard you try, I'm always going to have a hard time believing anything you say. And now we have confirmation in a story in which he's pretending it's, well, yeah, I probably should have said something. It's just an honest mistake. After you grill a guy about the very foundation
First of all, I'm not convinced it's an honest mistake.
I don't either.
But I wouldn't have minded if they hired him as a political analyst,
Absolutely.
which is what they said in the beginning. He's not a journalist. This game of being a journalist when you're not a journalist is some of why nobody takes any of this stuff seriously.
But are we all being naive here? Maybe we've reached a point. We've talked about this before, too. We shouldn't be shocked by any of this. The reality is that the old days, whatever they were, don't exist anymore. Everybody's going to be partisan at this point. No one's even going to try to hide it, maybe as effectively as they once did. And we just have to accept it.
Well, then why don't we just have the Democratic news is on at 5:30?
Well, we do
on
almost.
The other channel. Well, we
kind of do
with Fox News and
MSNBC.
Yeah. Well, we sort of are. I mean, Europe has their own party's newspapers, but it's gotten to the point where we get the news that I agree with. That's the only news I want to see. If there's any news I disagree with, they're biased. It's sort of where we are today.
And I want, and I think you want, just give me someone who's an equal opportunity questioner. Be devil's advocate, whatever side you might want to take. Just give me the questions that you need to ask.
Can you think of one working today? Can you think of one?
I think Anderson Cooper's the closest. I think he's the closest to what I would classify as a guy.
I agree with you. I think he doesn't try to act like he knows more than he does. He asks regular questions. Well, he's not a know-it-all like we are.
Right.
Okay,
you're a know-it-all.
Well,
let's
I try
move
to
on
be.
since you guys just agreed on something. How about it?
Are you excited?
I am.
Yeah, this is big for you, isn't it?
Let's go to the sports company Under Armour, the apparel company, pulled a T-shirt that was part of their band of ballers. Let's take a look at it. After some major complaints, you can see that it resembles the iconic image of servicemen raising the U.S. flag in Iwo Jima during World War II. The company has since apologized and removed its product from the websites. Ron,
you win. You win again.
My edit. We're approaching Memorial Day, which nobody bothers to think of what really Memorial Day is,
as opposed to Veterans Day,
and whatever.
Right.
I think that's offensive. It is offensive to me because it purports to be something like what happened at Iwo Jima. If you've read any of these books about Iwo Jima, I mean, this was the real deal. More Marines. I mean, this is as brutal a battle as there was. As far as I'm concerned, the only people that have a right to profit from that are people who were actually there. I think that's off limits. I don't think they intended, their intent was not bad. But I think it's offensive. I appreciate the fact that they apologize. What were they thinking in the first place?
I don't think they have anything to apologize for. We do disagree on something. I think and this gets to where a place I don't understand in the culture where everything is literal. There's no, doesn't you think in their right minds they are saying that one thing is as important as the other? They're doing it with a smile. They're trying to play off of that pay almost, I want to say homage to, obviously by definition, raising a basketball support isn't to the same level, but they are attempting, I think, to, as I said, I think people just get too literal. Whatever happened to irony? Is it gone? Is it dead? Well, I just don't understand why. I got emails from veterans who said they got a chuckle out of it. Well, they didn't take it literally because we've reached a point where we can't do anything but.
But this isn't irony. To me, this is taking a really iconic image, maybe the most iconic image of World War II and the Marines' sacrifice. And again,
but what's the line?
I'm sorry?
What's the line? How about baseball teams that wear fatigue caps? Why is that okay? Why is that grandfathered in? I mean, that's
I
playing
can't
baseball
really
is
draw
not
the
as
line, but
important
to me, this crosses it. I wasn't bothered. I think they had one where Washington crossing the Delaware. I wasn't bothered by that.
Well, they pulled that one too because they were afraid of you. Well, they thought you'd get mad about it somehow. It's offending George Washington's family.
I appreciate your viewpoint, but it's wrong.
No, you're wrong. You're taking it too literally.
This is how I feel about it. This is one you don't touch, and you don't try to make money off that sacrifice.
Let's go to their apology. We have their apology. Under Armour has the utmost respect and admiration for the men and women on active duty and veterans who have served our country. As such, we deeply regret and apologize that a T-shirt was not reflective of our values in honoring and supporting our country's heroes went on sale.
Well, this is not one of these deals where everybody's apologizing. They needed to apologize. I appreciate their apology. And quite frankly, I don't know what they were thinking in the first place in putting this out.
We get into this whole thing about we're not supposed to use war analogies. Do you think anybody's really confused when somebody says, I'm going to go to war over that subject? We have people out there who go, we shouldn't use that because war is too important. Why has the language reached a point where we have these policemen and women who take everything as literally as it sounds like you're taking it in this case?
I don't think it was an issue of confusion. To me, it was just the image profiting off really what I think is kind of a sacred image. If you go to Washington, D.C. and you see that memorial, pretty moving memorial.
And nobody's going to, I think, have any difficulty distinguishing between a made-up ad and Iwo Jima and supporting the troops who are supported more now than they've ever been.
Well, I agree.
All right, sit down. Thank you. Don't make me. Now, see now what happens. We don't have time for the giving gifts to the audience segment. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Late Show. I want to tell you one thing. I'll be honest with you. It's beginning to look like I'm not going to get the Tonight Show.
I don't think.
Saying goodbye to David Letterman. He signed off for the final time Wednesday night. I have to tell you, I've already caught heat for this one, but I wasn't super impressed with the finale, except for the top 10. But everybody I've talked to, every true Letterman fan said it was perfect to end his long run. Dan, what do you think? Was it fitting?
Well, first of all, I think Ron and I are going to have to talk about whether you're going to continue to be on this show for making such a. Do you want to talk about an unpatriotic statement?
This might be something we agree on.
We might agree on this particular issue. Well, I have a confession to make. I watched only part of it. I've never done this about any show that I've loved. All the other shows that ended, you know, whether you're talking about MASH or you're talking about Carson, I was there to the very end. I got misty when Bette Midler sang that last 2:45 song to Carson. I actually was getting so emotional about Letterman and how important that show was to me, I stopped watching it halfway through. Now, I taped it, although I don't think I have the whole tape because it went long, unfortunately, which is another story. But for some odd reason, Ron, I preferred the idea of not seeing it to the end, which I think was my way, not that he cares,
of avoiding the pain.
Of avoiding the pain and complimenting him and how significant a role that show made, culturally speaking, for lots of us of my generation and your generation.
See, it's perfect what Lori said, because more than almost anything, to me it was a generational show. There was a certain coming of age of a certain wise guy. The kids are taken over, and Letterman was like that. The beginning of Saturday Night Live, the Belushi, Aykroyd, and it was a certain kind of wise guy humor, Bill Murray, whatever, and either you got it or you didn't get it. And the people who got it, really, I feel it was our generation, you and me, I felt terrible when it was over, because once he's gone, that humor,
it's the end of that era.
That style is gone. And by the way, it's sort of the way my parents felt when Carson left. That was their generation. Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, they're great, but it's not the same thing.
It was, the part I saw was excellent. I think you thought it was excellent, so we do disagree with Lori there. The top 10, well, she liked the top 10 list. I thought it captured him pretty well. I also think the thing that is worth remembering on him, and there's a little of that in this show, is he did make a change. Post that quintuple bypass, where he suddenly, that and 9/11, he comes on the screen after 9/11 and just speaks to the audience, obviously. There's no comedy, there's no any sort of lead in other than him talking. And I thought that was an incredibly effective transformation and a sign of maturity that he got. I can't always be the guy that's going to jump into the wall on Velcro, that I can take this a different place. And because he'd been that guy previously, I think people really, it stood out as being especially powerful at serious moments with him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the younger David Letterman was not a nice guy.
No.
He didn't have those people that he was laughing with. He was laughing at them.
Point.
And he loved to stick pins and knives and even,
daggers,
machetes into major celebrities. I think he, like a lot of us, he got older.
Yes.
He mellowed. And when the show became earlier, it was sort of like, even though there may not be a difference in audience, he felt there was a difference between 11:30 and 10:30. He became much more mainstream. I always
and
liked
maybe
him.
that's not
I
all
liked
good.
him a little less, to be honest with you.
He suddenly, you felt like he was not as interested in making the guest feel uncomfortable, which was part of the genius of the show at its best.
Although one of the great lines is when he had Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
That thing, who was trying to put a deal over on Letterman. And
Right.
Letterman says, you know, how did you spend your time with the Unabomber? I mean, nobody ever
That
beat
was a
Letterman
memorable moment.
in a
And
conversation.
I just want to say, for the record, I do like Letterman, but I have to say
Oh,
enough
now
said.
you-
I
now
have to
you
say
like
enough
it.
said
Too
on
late.
this
See, there-
topic.
see,
We're
another
running out of
apology.
time.
You
Let's
know.
get to the lightning
I
round.
liked you better when you disagree.
Too many apologies in this show.
Let's start. Yeah, right. Let's start with St. Paul's population. Fairly dramatic increase. Are you surprised by this, Ron?
I'm surprised anybody doesn't live in St. Paul. Okay, I'm from St. Paul.
Here we go.
I don't know why
Here we
anybody
go.
lives in Minneapolis.
Speaking
Honestly,
of
St. Paul is
insecurity.
10,000 better, much better of a town. I lived in Boston. It's like Boston. It's a real
What?
city. Minneapolis is kind of a make-believe city. I don't understand. I don't know why everybody doesn't live there.
Why do you have, you're like every other St. Paul person has this sort of insecurity within the insecurity of being in the market. Why are you, I mean, St. Paul's quaint. It's kind of cute.
Have you ever been there?
Okay, next
Two
up.
times.
Next up, Star Tribune did a story this week, a chicken fight in New Brighton. Do you think chickens belong in the suburbs, Dan?
Well, here's what
This is a huge issue, Dan. Don't laugh it off.
I tossed and turned last night trying to figure out what I was going to say about this. I never knew this was a city or suburban issue because it was framed that way in the op-ed piece, and Lori just did the same thing. In the city, are chickens okay? I didn't know that it was a matter of suburbs, you don't want chickens, but city you do. Bring all the animals in, I guess. You know what I'd ban? Cats. I can't stand cats. Let's just get rid of all cats. Bring in all the chickens you want, get rid of the cats.
Okay, you're going to have cat fans upset with you.
Sorry.
Let's move on to why the owner of the Patriots isn't appealing the Deflategate situation, Dan.
Don't go with the conventional wisdom.
Well, I don't think I have the conventional wisdom, which is, well, first of all, we don't even know who
conventional
he'd
wisdom,
appeal.
there's a fixed deal.
Well, but the problem is, first, who is he going to appeal to? There's really no apparatus
I don't understand that.
for the owner or the team itself to appeal their punishment. A lot of people are going with the theory you just mentioned, which is this is the deal. He backs off on their punishment. That gives the commissioner more of a reason to go easier on Goodell.
I don't buy that theory, by
I
the
don't
way.
Okay,
either.
next up.
I don't either, actually.
Ron, American Pharoah going for the Triple Crown next month. Why haven't we seen Triple Crown in 37 years?
Well, let me tell you what winning the Triple Crown is like. It's like getting a bunch of crazy teenagers, because that's what 3-year-old horses, taking them to the Olympics, and they not only have to win the 100-yard dash or the 100-meter, they have to win the 440, and then on the same day they have to run the marathon.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. The last one we had was
happen.
1978.
It's going to happen.
Affirmed. I hope American
Will you bet on it?
I bet on it.
You already did.
I did bet on it.
Yeah. I think it's going to happen.
You should go buy a $2 ticket for a souvenir in case he wins. We haven't had one since 1978.
What's harder, winning the Triple Crown or the Timberwolves being a playoff team that actually gets back to the Western Conference
Well, the
Finals?
second one will never happen, so I think we have a better chance.
And now that Mad Men's over and Letterman's over, what are you guys going to binge watch?
Well, I'm not a big binge watcher, but I think I'm going to put in some old. I still got a couple old.
Well, you go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night. I
Teeth
don't
are in
know
the
what
glass
you can watch
early.
in the first place.
Three Stooges DVDs. I got a couple old medleys of the greatest hits from the Three Stooges.
I
Most
love the
underrated
Three
comedy
Stooges.
ever.
But why is it that men think the Three Stooges are funny? Women think they're stupid. They're stupid.
Because we're weird.
Don't you think?
That's part of it.
Really
So what's your
is.
show
Kinda,
now?
I love The Americans. I like House of Cards on Netflix. Orange is the New Black. But I have nothing else to do in my life. I have an empty life.
And
so
I'm
going to ask Dan if I can
you
borrow
have a full
his
life.
DVD
You have a
player and the
family.
Three
You have
Stooges.
whatever. I'm like a hermit.
Well, you know what though? The problem is I'm not going to watch any of the late nights. I don't like any of those guys.
No, I don't either.